Hello, my name's Gaz Whelan. This is my Monday stories. This week we're in Denver, Colorado. In 1990, we were doing an indoor festival. So anyway, we flew out to Chicago first through O'Hare Airport, which is a hub for most places in America. We arrive at the airport and we've got like a 4-hour transit time. So we go to the bar. There's a convenient Irish pub called O'Hare's. So we go in. We were all smokers in the band apart from Mark Day, so we went to the smoking section back in them days. All it was separated from the non-smoking section was a piece of rope, so obviously the smoke was going everywhere. Smoking section was busy. We were on the edge right next to the rope. We were smoking. A guy on the non-smoking, some American guy, businessman on his own, started complaining. So I said to him, we can't help the way the smoke goes and it's full here. You've got lots of space, sit somewhere else. And he turned around and said, lime is typical. You think you own the world, which I thought was quite ironic. And I said, sorry. And he said, you limeys, I'm Irish. And I said, oh, you don't sound Irish. He said, I'm Irish American. I said, oh, okay, whereabouts in Ireland are you from? And he said, I'm from Denver, Colorado. So I said, so you weren't born in Ireland? He said, no. So I said, where were your parents born in Ireland? He said, no, they were born in Denver also. So I said, your grandparents? He said, oh no, they were from California and Montana, respectively. So I said, your great-grandparents? He went, yeah, I think they were from Ireland. I said, okay. Oh, whereabouts in Ireland? Dublin City was his reply, of course. I'm surprised he didn't say Dublin City, London, because we always get, whenever we were anywhere, we'd say, where you from? Manchester. We'd be introduced as a band from Manchester, London, England. That's very common. Doesn't seem to happen these days, but it did back then. So I said, oh, right, okay. Really, we're probably more Irish than you. In fact, we are more Irish than you. You're fourth or fifth generation. We're more Irish than you. And he said, so whereabouts is your family from then? So I said, County Londonderry. And he said, County Londonderry, where's that? I said, it's a rural county in the south. It's the home of skiffle music. He said, are you a skiffle band? I nearly attempted doing the accent then, but I won't. Are you a skiffle band? I went, yeah, that's why we're a skiffle band. And that kind of calmed me down, and he moved away. We get our flight to Denver. We arrive in Denver, and because it was a festival, an international festival, bands were coming in from different parts of the world and certainly all across America. And you had to do one of them little press conferences at the airport, a bit like the Beatles did at JFK, but on a tiny scale, of course. So we were ushered to sit down there. None of us wanted to speak. We'd had a few drinks. We were tired, but God bless Bez. Bez would always speak up. He would always step up in them situations. But like the rest of us, Bez was partially deaf due to the late nights of the Hacienda and being on stage all the time. So we always misheard things, and we were told where we were playing, what we were doing, and we never got it right. We used to always get it wrong, but we'd keep our mouth shut because we didn't know. But Bez didn't care. He didn't care what people think. He would just say it, which gives people the wrong impression about Bez sometimes. He's actually very intelligent and really, really well read. Anyway, bless him, he steps up on this occasion, and they asked where we're doing a warm-up show in Boulder, Colorado before the festival. And the venue was called the Metro Aardvark. Now, before the internet, there's lots of places called Aardvark then, because it double A shoved into the top of the directory list. So it's quite a common name. But we misheard it and we weren't sure. Metro Aardvark's a strange name, so we wasn't sure. So they asked what was the name of the venue in Boulder we were playing. So I leans to me, he says, Metro Aardvark. So Bez is next to me, so I lean to Bez and go, Metro Aardvark. So Bez shouts out, Tesco's car park, and they have no idea what Tesco's is, and we just fall about laughing, and then Bez starts laughing. And then the next question, they stand up, the journalist there in America, they stand up and say, I'm Catherine Taylor from the Pittsburgh Tribune, or I'm Joe Donnelly from the Boston Globe, or I'm Mark Johnson from New York Post. They'd always stand up and say the name. Anyway, this occasion, this lady stands up and she says, I'm Karen Kennedy. I never forget her name. I'm Karen Kennedy from the Pennsylvania Tribune. And Beth shouts out, oh, Mega, where Dracula's from. He'd obviously got Pennsylvania and Transylvania mixed up, and they didn't have a clue. We just burst out laughing, and they started laughing. They thought he was being kind of Beatlesque and on purpose, and he didn't. And then he starts laughing and he realises his error. But it ends the press conference, which is fantastic, so we leave. So that was beautiful because Bez was so funny. And so what I had at this point, the two Pauls in the band, Paul Ryder and Paul Davies, the two funniest people I've ever met in my life. Ask anyone who's ever worked with us or travelled with us crew, they'll say that they get you through the tours. Them us three were really tight, had a very similar sense of humour. But them two were so funny. I mean, really, really funny. I mean, Paul Ryder had a really, really sharp, sarcastic sense of humour, and PD had a really bizarre sense of humour. In fact, Going back to mention it again, plug the book I've nearly finished, All My Friends Are Junkies, about my experience in the Mondays as a youngster growing up. It's a coming of age story really. This is a little section where I describe PD when I'm in the band and he was my school friend and I'm trying to get him into the band. But the only vacant spot was a keyboard player. He didn't want to play keyboards, but this explains how great PD is and how funny he is. This is what I write in the book. The issue I wanted to raise this week was my old school friend Paul Davis, who had been coming down to rehearsals the last few weeks just to hang around and entertain us with his bizarre and brutal sense of humour. He hadn't been at tonight's rehearsals, where I'd both agreed, myself and PD, to give us space so that I could discuss with the other 3 members of the band about him joining the band. An issue that had already had a brief yet bizarre airing at our last rehearsal, where Mr. Paul Davis was our only guest. Just as the last guitar note of the evening was fading at a similar pace as our enthusiasm, PD stood up, clapped, smiled and announced to us all that he wanted to be the bass player. Sean, still with microphone in hand, laughed, pointed to his brother and said, "Our kid Paul's a bass player." This did nothing to deter PD. He just moved his gaze to the drums and said, "OK, drummer then, but I do prefer bass." I was not offended, in fact quite the opposite. I found it amusing and very PD. I had been privy and a fan of his cubist humour that was void of any pastiche, colloquial flow or reasoning throughout high school. PD had mental agoraphobia with his own topography of reality, accidentally manufacturing a new kind of intellect that was very amusing indeed. Sean laughed even louder and simply said, "You idiot, Gaz is your best mate, what about keyboards?" PD looked at him and said, "Fuck that, keyboards are for weirdos." A communal ironic smile swept across each of our faces like a Mexican wave. Case adjourned. So that's what PD had, a really bizarre sense of, but really funny. And anyone who could get you through most tours, he was just so funny. Anyway, we go to the hotel in Denver. So in the hotel, we drop our stuff off. PD, Bez and also always share a room, and we would mix and match. I think this time I was sharing with Mark because we drop our stuff off and we go to, there's an Irish pub again, directly facing the hotel. So we go to the Irish pub, me and Mark. Mark likes to drink as well. So we go in there, we order a couple of pints of Guinness, so we sit in the front window and we're looking at the hotel. It's just across the street. And then we notice who comes in the pub. Mr. Fifth Generation, the Irish guy. So I said, "Hey, listen, no hard feelings, let me buy you a drink." He says, okay. So I says, "Do you want a Guinness?" And he says, no, I don't want any of that stuff. I want a traditional, a proper American beer like Budweiser. I said, "What, Budweiser, the Czechoslovakian beer?" "Yeah, no problem." Anyway, so I'll get my beer. And I said, "Come and sit with us." And he sits down next to us and, you know, it's fine. We're looking out and we have a couple of drinks and we're chatting, and then I go back to the bar again. As I'm at the bar, Mark shouts to me, "Gaz?" "Yeah." "What floor are we on in the hotel?" So I pulled my key out and I'm at floor 11. We're on the 4th floor. He said, "There's smoke bellowing out of a window on the 4th floor here." And I thought, oh, here we go again. Now, we'd had a few incidents with fires in hotels and tour buses, falling asleep with cigarettes. So this was one that wasn't the first time. Luckily, I mean, the last time I remember was in New York. I'm digressing again, sorry. It was in New York in 1990. And we used to stay at a place called the Omni Park Central. And I had a couple of friends, Kari and Kingo. Kingo a year above me, Kari lower. We're over in America doing Camp America. So they said, "Oh, come down to New York for the gig. Can we crash in your room?" So I said, yeah, of course, no problem. So we go out, do the full night, and obviously they're tired because they travelled, and they hit the hotel. They said, "Give me a key," so I give them the hotel room key, and they go back to my room about 2 a.m. I'm out till about 4 or 5. I go back to the room, and they're both in my bed, so I have to sleep on the floor, typical. Anyway, I'd asked to be put on the 16th floor because they put us all on the 2nd floor, and I knew the party would be going on, so I wanted a quiet room away from everyone. The rest of the band were on the 2nd floor. Phone goes ringing at 6:30 in the morning. It's a hotel. Fire, and the fire alarm starts going off. Alarm's going off, and then the phone's going. So I'm trying to wake Kari and Kingo up. I said, "Kingo, there's a fire. We need to get out. And they're like, "Oh, leave." And I said to her on the phone, "Where's the floor? Where's the fire from?" They said, "The 2nd floor. Someone's fallen asleep with a cigarette." Knew it was one of our lot again. So anyway, so I'm trying to get out of there. I get dressed, get out of the room, and say to Kari, waking them up in the bed, I said, "Kari, Kingo, we need to go down. There's a fire. We're on the 16th floor." So Kari looks round to me half asleep and says, "What floor are we on again?" I said, "Floor 16. He said, "What floor's the fire on?" I said, "It's on the 2nd floor. He said, "Give us a ring back when the fire gets to the 10th floor. So I said, all right, I left him. Anyway, but luckily, nothing came of it again. So it wasn't the first time there was a fire. So I sat looking, and then the fire brigade all turn up, or the fire department as they call it, and they rush in. They've all got the masks on, the fires, and they're getting everyone out of the hotel. As everyone's out of the hotel, the last two people to leave the hotel were two in the room, Bez and Paul Ryder. Both got these, the firemen have put these masks on them, and they've got a little bit of smoke on them. I wouldn't say they were like Laurel and Hardy when they fall down the chimney and they've got the hair up, and but they were kind of covered in smoke. But these face masks on, but Paul Ryder was carrying an unlit cigarette in his hand as he walked out. And they take the masks off him, and Paul Ryder puts a cigarette in his hand, and it says something to the fireman, who gets a bit angry with him. There's a bit of thing, Bez calms it down, and then within a couple of minutes we're watching, Bez is in the fire engine talking to the fireman, having a laugh with him. So we go out to see what's happened. Bez said, it's okay, I've calmed it all down, put on the guest list for the show tomorrow, everything's fine. So I said to Paul Ryder, what did you say? It upset him. He said, I just said to him, out of anybody you'd know, if anybody you'd know, where can I get a light? Have you got a light? And the fireman got really angry with him. Anyway, the gig next night we're doing in Boulder, Colorado, and the businessman turns up. We invited him, 5th generation, and 6 firemen turn up and do the show. They're backstage, and the joints are getting passed around, and the firemen are getting drunk, but they're getting more stoned, and the 5th generation is getting really stoned, and then they start dancing and partying. So I don't know what else they've had, but they certainly had a smoke of weed. And this 5th generation guy sat his own to start talking to him, and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I've got some issues with my childhood." I said, "What's that?" He said, "My sister has always been taller than me." And I thought, "Oh, that's a bit bizarre." So I'll leave him at that. And then the fire captain comes over, and the fire captain comes over to him and he says, "Do you like jazz?" Now, this is a question I've been asked a couple of times before. I don't know why people seem to want to ask me, but I know it's a question that you can't win. If I say, I didn't like jazz at that time, but if you say yes and they don't, you're in trouble. If you say no and they do, so it's a loaded question. Funny, it happened to me once before. I'm going to digress briefly again. In about 87, 88, we'd played Aberdeen. We'd ended up partying afterwards, and we'd ended up in some council flat on the edge of town, and it was a Saturday night, Sunday morning. I remember 3 o'clock Sunday morning walking back to the hotel in the city centre, Aberdeen, and there was no one about, desolate, but there's a bloke on the opposite side of the street, as drunk as me, walking down, big guy, and he was looking around and he was shouting stuff out, seemed quite menacing, so I was kind of not making eye contact. As I went past, I hear him, and he goes, I won't attempt the accent, he goes, "Hey pal." I was like, "Oh, what?" And then he starts walking over to it, and he's drunk, and he looks drunk, angry, and he's splurting. I couldn't understand what he was saying, and he gets right in my face, and he says, "Do you like jazz?" And I thought, ooh, I'm in trouble here. So I said, "Do you?" He said, "Aye, I love it." I went, "So do I." He went, "Thank you," taps me on the back, taps me on the head, and gives me a kiss on the face. His breath just stunk of whiskey, booze, and all sorts. And then wanders off, but I got away and I was safe. So people keep asking me this random question: do I like jazz? I don't know why. So I says to the fire chief, "Do you?" He said, "Aye, I love it." I said, "So do I, so do I." And he pats me on the back and walks off, so saved himself twice. So the night goes on, they're drinking more and more, and they're getting really out of hand. Smoking, dancing, tops off. They all have the fireman t-shirts on. They all look like male strippers in the end. And thank God that night there wasn't any fires in Denver or anywhere in Colorado, Denver or Boulder where it was, because it would have burnt like Rome, because they were incapable of doing anything. Anyway, that's this week's story. Until next week, which I'm not sure. I think I'll go for an early days story, or maybe another Barbados one. Until then, may your God be with you. Goodbye, friends.